a Commander story today that might not have crossed your radar, and it's really stick a pin in it for later, because it's something that didn't happen, not something that did. Jason Wright, the current team president of business operations for the Commanders, apparently was a finalist for the Green Bay Packers president and CEO job. This was reported by Jonathan Jones of CBS Sports, who's an excellent reporter, and Jones said that Wright was a finalist for this job, which would have made Jason Wright essentially the first person of color with his kind of, or I guess more specifically, the first black person with this kind of power in the NFL. Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, of course, is a person of color, and as is Kim Pegula, the wife of Terry Pegula, and they're co-owners of the Bills. But they're owners who are the majority owners of teams. But because the Packers are publicly traded, this would have been the first time that the highest ranking single person in any organization was a black individual. And so the history here would have been quite tremendous for Jason and for the league. But on a less historical, less grandiose, more functional level, Jason Wright nearly was a finalist and nearly left the Commanders, which a lot of you are going, well, good. I wish he got the job. I wish he was gone, because you don't like Jason Wright, and that's fine. I'm not here to necessarily litigate that right now. What I am here to tell you, though, is if you read the writing on the wall, it would seem that Jason Wright is not going to be here much longer anyway. Jason Wright was hired in August of 2020. My guess is he had probably a 2, 3, or 4-year deal. And maybe if he had a 2-year deal, he probably signed another 2-year deal in 2022. If he had a 3-year deal, he probably signed an extension, like a 1-year extension in 2023 when Josh Harris got there and they're like, hey, we can't change everything right now. We'll talk again in a year. But my guess is, I can call it a slightly educated guess, is that Jason Wright's deal is up in August 2024. Meaning, if he was interviewing for the Green Bay Packers job, he would have already signed an extension, which would make that weird, or he doesn't have a contract, and maybe they're finalizing. Maybe they're working on it right now. Maybe he interviewed for the Packers just in case things fell apart. Maybe it was a leverage play. Maybe whatever. I'm not saying that 100% a month from now, Jason Wright is no longer going to be with the Commanders. But I would have thought, last time I heard anything, there wasn't anything done to extend the contract. That was months ago. And we are now a month before this before his contract, I believe, is set to expire. And it comes out that he was interviewing and was a finalist somewhere else. So the idea that he would have just signed an extension and then be interviewing for the Packers job at the same time, I don't think makes a lot of sense. So it would seem, Anthony Haney, that Jason Wright's time in Washington, D.C. as president of the Washington Commanders, a year into Josh Harris's tenure, may be coming to an end. Did I miss anything? Is there a logic dot that's not connecting for you here?
No, I think
it sounds pretty logical.
Yeah, I think it tracks.
Yeah, so the question then becomes, then we get to the, is it actually a good move? Like, if Josh Harris is telling Jason, hey, go ahead, search, we're probably going to move on, is that a wise move? And I think Jason Wright working for Josh Harris, significant greater than sign Jason Wright working for Dan Snyder. Jason has executed very well on a lot of things that are really important to getting the Josh Harris era off the ground. And he deserves a lot of credit for those things. He also deserves blame for a lot of blunders that he did not help prevent or was responsible for during the Dan Snyder portion of his career. And I think some of those, Jason, in hindsight, probably looks at and was like, yep, I did not do a good job there, because that's the nature of life. You make mistakes. And when you're in a role as high profile as his, your mistakes are there for the world to see. And in some cases, like the Sean Taylor stuff, people are just never going to forgive him for that. I do not put the name Commanders nor the absolutely botched rollout of said name on Jason. But there's a lot of people that will associate that with him forever. He ultimately did oversee it. Actually, that's not even fair. He ultimately was charged with executing it. Overseeing it goes to the Snyders. That was their idea. And that was a very Dan Snyder-driven move, which, again, goes back to a point that I've made 1,000 times, which is, why did the NFL not kick him out before they renamed the team? Oh, my God, you had a chance for a total franchise reset, you morons. What are you doing? Goodelling. But anyway, he's gone, so that's nice. But I think over the last year, from being ready to welcome fans to training camp last year, like a lot of that stuff had to be prepared before Josh Harris owned the team. Like you don't buy the team on July 19th, and then the next day have stands ready at training camp. Like that stuff has been planned and worked through, and you're just anticipating the new boss saying, "Yep, it's cool that you put that on the credit card." So there's a lot of stuff like that in some of the things that they did last year to help rebuild the brand, rebuild the bridges with fans that I think Jason and his group on the business side did a really good job at. They were ready to go with sponsorship deals once the ownership change happened. That is something that clearly his office, if you will, his side of the building drove. There has been a lot of positive change on the culture, and Jason deserves some level of credit for that. And the people he's hired, the people he's empowered, and his own way of running a business, and his adaptability to work with Josh Harris. All that's fine and dandy. And by the way, I think the fact that he's been a DC guy, like in the DC world, like he was a McKinsey bro beforehand, the consulting company, right? Because he worked at McKinsey, like he's spent some time on Capitol Hill, and some of that has been really helpful to the stadium pursuit at RFK. But I think the question Josh Harris is asking now is not, is Jason Wright doing a good, okay, or even fantastic job? That's not really how Josh Harris operates. Josh Harris is a cold businessman when it comes to certain things. And as much as he has tried to be a little warmer, I think, in his ownership of the Commanders and community-based and really leaning into that because he realizes how important that is, when it comes to the business, his question is not, is Jason Wright doing a great job even? It's, could someone do a better job? Is this the literal best person for the job? And because of the continuity in year one, there's no question Jason Wright was the best person for that job, because you have to have some level of continuity. Like, you can't fix stuff if you don't know where it is. And I think a year is enough time to take inventory of what's going on, and then perhaps you can bring in your own person. And that I wonder if is happening. I think a lot of people anticipated Jason Wright would get at least a year, maybe longer. And I think the way things have gone, and the other thing is, as forward-facing as Jason has been, when they introduced the ownership group, like Jason emceed that event. That's not insignificant. And there's been a lot of other times that Jason has been trusted to be the forward-facing, like, voice and face of the organization, not necessarily from the ownership, but kind of representing the ownership. It's like, hey, this is our president. This is the guy that is out front. He's the highest-ranking person that's involved day to day, where ownership is going to check in on a more week-to-week or every couple of days basis. But ownership doesn't have a designed job in the way that Jason Wright has a designed job. And so I do wonder if this news about the Packers job that Jason Wright apparently almost got, by the way, there's a guy named Ed Policy, I believe is his name, which sounds like a fake name. It sounds like the fake president of the Green Bay Packers. Yeah, it's old Ed Policy. But that's who got the job. He was their in-house counsel and COO. So they go internal hire in 2025. Mark Murphy's got one more year left before he's going to retire. But it definitely sounds like, based off of this reporting, that this could be the final month for Jason Wright in Ashburn, or you're going to hear about a contract extension for Jason Wright, I would imagine, pretty soon. I think it's one or the other. You can't let this hang out there. People are good. Because the other thing is, if I'm talking about on the radio, there's no way that Nikki and Ben and John and the people on the beat are not digging on this.
Yeah, definitely an interesting time. I think, I think. Well, I will ask you. Do you think this is one of those situations where, the Packers more so like sought this guy out, or this was where Jason Wright actually, looked into, the Packers vacancy there, and we're just looking for his next move. Essentially, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, depending on when the uh, depending on when this all started, I think it could be either way. But like in terms of career mobility, when you're the team president of the Washington Commanders, there isn't a lot of places up in the NFL to go. The Packers is the one job that's kind of up because of its unique nature, right? I guess Jason could add some football responsibility here if he wanted to, if that's something that interested him. I don't know that that's what he wants to actually do. I don't know if he's into, even from like, forget scouting, from like a contract standpoint, because I do believe Mark Murphy has been involved in some of that stuff in Green Bay over the years. It would be great to talk to is Andrew Brandt, who used to hold a really senior position, if not this position, in the Packers front office. I don't think he was quite the president. I think he worked under Mark Murphy. But point is, like, the Packers job is unique because you don't work for an owner. And so you are the most powerful person in the organization. And thus, it is a promotion. It is a one-up to his current job, which is about as powerful as you get in an NFL organization. So I could see it either way. I could see him knowing this was open, reaching out through back channels and being like, hey, I'm interested. And them going like, okay, we're interested in you. You're a former player. You've got all this varied background. Like, you seem like you could be up for this. Let's talk. And he made it through a lot. I'm sure there were multiple rounds of interviews, and he was a finalist. Like, that's not nothing. That's impressive. But ultimately they decide to go in a different direction, and we'll see what that means. And I think we'll have our answer within the next, 6 weeks, of whether or not that was because Jason knew he had to find something, or because this was a unique opportunity that even, maybe he went to Josh Harris and was like, hey, the Packers reached out to me. This is a one-of-one opportunity. I love it here, but I'd like to pursue this because it's the Packers' job. And Josh Harris was like, I respect the hustle. Go for it, dude. But we'll see. I think we'll know our answer soon enough. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.